I've been fortunate. I've been able to work with people with drug and alcohol problems, been able to recognize that it's a fatal illness, doesn't need to be fatal, but it's the fatalities you remember. A research assistant at Brandeis University taught me an important story. He was struggling with alcohol and drug use disorders, drifted in and out of recovery. As a manager, I did not know how to deal with that. Brandeis University did not have an employee assistance program. I had no one to turn to for my assistance. In July of 2000, we had a voicemail. David had died of an overdose. I was very close to his father, and we cried a little together. His father said, "David's in a better place now." And that was true, but he didn't need to be in that place. There are things we could have done that could have helped him survive. I'm Dennis McCarty. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm at Oregon Health and Science University. I'm a professor in the School of Public Health and the School of Medicine. I do research on treatment for alcohol and drug use disorders and ways to improve the quality of care. I went to UK because it was a state university. I was the eldest of 6. I wanted to be careful on how my parents spent their money. Kentucky had an unbelievably strong faculty who encouraged me to reach my full potential. My undergraduate years at the University of Kentucky were important. 1969, 1970, that was the year of student mobilization against the war in Vietnam. Kent State, ROTC building burned down. And that was really a period of coming of age in my life, because I learned that I could be active in those movements. I was writing op-ed pieces for the newspaper. I was organizing students to march on Frankfurt. Learned that I had leadership capacities that I didn't recognize previously. I didn't seek out to do studies of alcohol and drug use disorders, but as a graduate student, I was invited to become a research associate on a grant. So I was at the forefront. I was in the first generation of students who were learning those skills, who were applying psychology skills to the research of how do you address alcohol and drug use disorders. And you weren't trained in that. It didn't exist. We were inventing it as we went forward. And that became the door to the rest of my life. That became the stepping stone into my career. An important part of this field is that it is stories of men and women. I was in Kansas City to speak to the Addiction Technology Transfer Centers, had a good presentation, went back to the airport. The last person came in, dropped in the middle of the seat and said, "I see you're reading papers, what do you do?" And we talked from Kansas City almost until we sat down in St. Louis, and the man in the window seat reached over and dropped a coin in my hand. And I turned it over, it had a 2 on it. I knew that meant 2 years of sobriety. And he said, "Well, I went into treatment 6 years ago, but I wasn't ready to stop drinking." He's blaming himself for his failure 6 years ago to stay in recovery. We measure things in terms of years of sobriety, not days of functioning improved. And we need better measures that help us move patients from not being ready to being ready without blaming them for not being ready. And so that's part of what keeps me connected. That's part of what keeps me going, is knowing how to improve care for all of those men and women. Sarah and I were graduate students in 1972 at the University of Kentucky in the psychology program. I took her to a Johnny Cash concert in May at the end of the year. That became a first date and have been together ever since. We share our love of wildlife, especially birds. It's not writing grants, it's not writing for publication, it's just enjoying nature. We've traveled the world seeking new birds and seeking adventure, and we're approaching about 2,000 birds worldwide in our birding career. The benefits of an arts and science education is that you're getting a broad perspective. You're not just a technician. You're learning to think. You're learning to challenge. You're learning to question. You learn to express yourself. From my undergraduate years, I began to recognize the importance of being vocal, of being part of a change agent. I recognized that embracing the problem is often a way to solve the problem. Our patients have a too often fatal disorder that too often is unrecognized, untreated. But it's also a disorder that we can treat effectively, that there is hope for, that we should be working with more effectively and more earnestly and not hide. We should embrace it, not avoid it.